The transformation of China from a rule taker to a potential rule shaker or even rule maker within the international legal order is one of the most critical aspects of understanding China's interaction with legal globalization. Key manifestation of China's evolution from a rule taker to a rule shaker lies in its creation of parallel institutions that challenge the normative authority of Western-dominated legal and financial architecture.
You talk a lot about, rule making, rule shaking, and whatnot. It's certainly not yet a rule shaker or maker.
What kind of globalization is this? So then, is it inclusive, promoting South-South legal pluralism? Is it hierarchical?
Can we take China's approach to the existing mechanisms, arbitration, commercial courts, as an acknowledgement and an understanding that China needs to and will respect party autonomy of the players within the commercial dispute resolution area?
In your point of view, could this new mediation initiative like the IOMID begin to move us beyond what you called vertical stasis, perhaps showing the first signs of a more coordinated, consent-based global framework?
Initiative.
It's a wonderful initiative.
The Global South Network opened new horizons for judicial cooperations.
Global South Network provide a platform for meaningful dialogue and collaboration, fostering efforts to build a more equitable and resilient legal landscape.
GSN Network continues to expand areas of activity, further strengthening its impact and reach.
The universal concept of justice compels us to join our efforts, and this is, I believe, the forum for promoting the same goal.
Well deserved for the hectic activity you have made. I am astonished, I am amazed, I was impressed.
May I at the outset commend you, Dr. Ayad, for the immense work that you're doing in the GSN. The Global South Network is a much admired initiative.
كانت جزء لا يتجزأ من الدولة العثمانية.
We are being criticized for doing our job and for upholding the federal constitution. Like I have said in the past, I will not bend to such lame pressures and insinuations.
It's commendable. South Network focuses on all disciplines and regions, creating a bridge between academia, civil society, legal community, etc.
Quiero expresar mi sincero agradecimiento al Dr. Nauman Riyad.
Dr. Nauman Riyad, the founder and convener of the Global South Network. His visionary leadership has established a vibrant forum where judges, academics, and practitioners from around the world can share and exchange ideas. Initiatives like today's dialogue allow us to compare jurisprudence, share best practices, and develop common principles. This has the potential to contribute to transnational standards in procedure and enhance administrative law globally.
I would like to point out that Dr. Riyad's initiatives have not only enriched comparative judicial dialogue, have also fostered mutual understanding of the diverse challenges that courts face in safeguarding the rule of law and constitutionalism.
We can rule when we want in the cases which are brought to us by citizens and residents. In the EU, this openness of mind is increased by the fact we apply, in some cases, same norms from the EU treaties or the EU directives or regulations.
A very good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the 40th seminar. So it's a very important one, the 40th seminar in phase 4 of the International Interdisciplinary PhD in Progress weekly seminar series organized by the Global South Network. Before we all begin, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Nouman Rayat. He's a lecturer in law at Leicester Law School and founder and chief governor of the Global South Network. He has been working tirelessly to organize and to lead this inspiring weekly series that continues to bring together scholars and practitioners from across disciplines and regions. So that's indeed very impressive. I am Leila Shukroon. I'm Professor of International Law at the University of Portsmouth in the UK. I'm the former Director of the Democratic Citizenship Theme and now the Director of the Global Justice and Rights Centre of Excellence. As some of you may know, my research is Global South focus. It explores the intersections between international trade and investment law, commerce, human rights and development studies, as well as social theory and jurisprudence to some extent. It is, as I said, focused on the Global South, including particularly India, South Asia, China, and East Africa. I had the pleasure of living in these countries and interacting with them for the past 25 years. I also currently co-chair a network you may know about, the South Asia International Economic Law Network, with my dear colleague Professor James Nedumpara. We are the co-chairs, and I also serve from time to time as an arbitrator and mediator and independent expert on international economic law and businesses and human rights. It's a great honor to chair today's session, so thank you so much for this invitation. Indeed, today's sessions brings together a very impressive panel of discussants and presenters. We are joined first by Dr. Thembi Madalane from the Institute for Sustainability and Corporate Citizenship at UNISA, whose research focuses on international economic law, global governance, EU-China-Africa relations, and the Global South, indeed. Our second discussant is Dr. Masood Ahmad, who's Associate Professor at Law at the University of Leicester, a distinguished scholar and practitioner whose research on civil procedure, alternative dispute resolution, and international commercial arbitration has shaped both academic debates and policy reform in England and Wales particularly. Our third discussant is Dr. Yizhi Wang, PhD in International Legal Studies from Waseda University and Fox International Fellow at Yale University in 2022-23. The works bring fresh insights into international legal dynamics in East Asia. And finally, last but not least, obviously, it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today's session, Mrs. Yizhi Wang, who's a PhD candidate at Queen Mary University in London. Yizhi's doctoral research explores China's engagements with legal globalization. She's going to tell us more about this term, legal globalization, within the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative, a topic that sits at the heart of today's discussion. Indeed, she holds an LLB from East China University of Political Sciences and an LLM from the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and she brings both academic and practical experience from her work with courts, consulates, and arbitration institutions. So today, Yizhi will present part of a PhD project, which is titled China's Engagement with Legal Globalization under the Belt and Road Context. She will speak for about 30 to 35 minutes so that we have enough time for questions and comments from our discussants. And if time permits, we'll also take questions from the audience. So I would very much like to hear your thoughts. What is generally useful is to use the chat to ask your questions, but we may also hear directly from you. So without further ado, Yizhi, I would like to give you the floor. The screen is yours.
Thank you, and it's a very flattered to present my current research with everyone in this platform. As you can see in the slides, my topic is about China's engagement with legal globalization and the Belt and Road context. So first, I want to first clarify some very key concepts in my research. It's about what is globalization, what is legal globalization, and what is convergence and divergence of law. So first of all, globalization can be viewed as phenomenon or trend or process. In an era of growing interconnections, globalization first and foremost emergence in economic area in nature. So with successive waves of globalization, the essential globalization is the expansion of transnational economic activities. The trend has extended across multiple dimensions, including the culture, social, and legal spheres, as part of the broader economic globalization process. So, and the response from legal globalization, from legal academia to globalization has been uneven and fragmented, most of which resides in other traditional studies of international law or legal history. It was not until the late 1980s that the study of globalization of law slowly became a full-fledged doctrine. By collecting the arguments and perspectives of a few past scholars, some 90s scholarship began to formalize legal globalization as a separate approach to the legal study, aiming at exploring legal approach to globalization and trying to analyze legal issues through globalization perspective. So after 2000, relying on continuing work on the theoretical implications of legal globalization study, scholars started to enrich the research on law and globalization, focusing on the debate of globalization's impact on law. So Professor Ralph Michaels examined the interaction of multiple legal systems, significantly contributing to the concept legal pluralism as one of the most influential ideas in legal globalization studies, defining it as different legal systems coexist in the same social field. Legal pluralism highlights the interaction and overlap of various legal orders, including state law, international law, and non-state legal systems such as customary law and religious law. The emergence of these notable concepts emphasizes the necessity for legal scholars to transit state-centric perspectives on law and examine the interaction between diverse legal frameworks and clarifying the focal points of legal globalization study. So in this sense, legal globalization places emphasis on the spillover phenomenon of law from traditionally segregated legal systems. Such spillover phenomenon are all-encompassing, ranging from interplay between parallel national legal systems to possible mutual absorption across traditional boundaries of international and national law. So legal globalization research can be understood as a study on the worldwide progression of emergent transnational legal structures and interconnections among hybrid legal systems along the dimensions of intensity, viscosity, and impact. So following this definition, the term legal globalization can thus be comprehended as a description of trends in the transnationalism of law, assuming a global significance. And so based on this legal globalization theory, another very key concept in my study is about convergence and divergence of law. This is also a popular department in legal globalization study. Convergence of law always be used for assessing the legal globalization participation influence from several convergent approaches. In general, the term convergence is about a movement of law towards common standards. Most states lack the degree and areas of legal convergence autonomously, considering their own economic interests. For example, in climate change area, countries that are among the most vulnerable to its effects have taken a proactive stance in their commitment to the Paris Agreement, while only a few countries at the forefront of legal development make the legal binding net zero strategy. So, and on the other side, compared to convergence of law, divergence of law does not seem to be mainstream, as the term tends to have little presence in today's globalized world with its many multilateral frameworks and rapidly changing iterations of international treaties. However, it is precisely that the divergence of law that is necessary for the discussion of convergence of law, as divergence of law often expresses the long-term results of convergence of law. For example, in the international IP law, most countries have adapted the principles of some very famous international conventions like the Berne convention. But in long time, lots of countries like US and also the EU region has adapted the principle for their own local principles, unique cultures or others. So it can be viewed as a divergence law in long-term convergence of law. Yeah. So divergence law sometimes mean competition in rulemaking and the globalization. So it offers a global perspective on current transnational legal research. Divergence and convergence, including like emergent laws that extend beyond the boundaries of national states. Yeah, so another is that the theoretical framework in my research is based on Jean-Bernard Ovid. Sorry, this is a French professor, so maybe my pronunciation is a bit confusing. This is a very famous scholar on legal globalization studies, and based on his theoretical framework, I took a two-dimensional legal globalization theoretical framework in my research. The vertical and horizontal divisions in the actors' engagement with legal globalization development can be viewed. So you can see like the table. It can be used to plot all interactions as if on a coordinate axis as shown in the table. The relationship between these two dimensions is intimately tied to the spillover phenomenon, which forms the central focus of the legal globalization research. The vertical illustrates that in light of globalized transnational economic activities and institutional responsibilities are proliferating and overlapping, transcending the limitation from legal levels. Currently, the mutual assimilation and cooperation transiting among different legal systems render the interaction of these systems more routine and diminish legal uncertainty, so thereby removing evidence to economic cooperation. Thus, if the subject is a single legal globalization participant, for example, a country like China, such as or even a smaller institution, this metric-like theoretical framework is useful for examining whether they promote or confront legal globalization, both vertically and horizontally. So the first step is to determine the legal participants level with the three levels: international level, transnational level, or the national level. And then the second step is to assess its impact on legal globalization, both vertically and horizontally. So based on this theoretical framework, I want to first take an overview of China's long-term participation in legal globalization. The transformation of China from a rule taker to a potential rule shaker or even rule maker within the international legal order is one of the most critical aspects of understanding China's interaction with legal globalization. China's engagement with legal globalization has undergone a significant transformation since its reform and opening up in 1978. Yeah, initially positioned itself as a rule taker, China entered the global legal order by conforming to existing international rules for sure, especially in trade, investment, and IP law. For example, its accession to the WTO in 2001, which widely be viewed as a watershed moment. China undertook more than 700 binding commitments, including lowering its tariffs and opening service sectors, marking one of the most comprehensive accession agreements in WTO history. This phase reflected China's aim to integrate itself into the global economy, attract foreign investment, and enhance domestic governance through external legal norms. However, as China's economic and geopolitical power grew, it gradually transitioned from a passive recipient of international norms to a more assertive rule shaker. This shift became particularly evident in the post-2008 global financial crisis era, when China began to question the legitimacy and equity of existing legal orders dominated by Western powers. A key manifestation of China's evolution from a rule taker to a rule shaker lies in its creation of parallel institutions that challenge the normative authority of Western-dominated legal and financial architecture. For example, example, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, which has a very close link to Belt and Road proposal, which I will mention it later. This institution, AIIB, represents more than just alternatives to the World Bank. It signals China's intent to reshape global governance norms around principles of state sovereignty, development primacy, and non-conditionality. Unlike Bretton Woods institutions, which often tie financial assistance to liberal economic and political reforms, these China-supported institutions operate with governance structure that prioritize efficiency over democratic accountability and non-interference over right-based conditionality. In this context, it challenged the universality of liberal legalism by proposing a model of development finance that is more accessible to numerous states in the global south. So also under the BRI context, which means after 2013, this institutional strategy extends to China's promotion of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, such as the China International Commercial Court, CIIC, in 2017, and a lot of regional arbitration center, for example, China African Arbitration Center, which is all under the BRI, Belt and Road context. So, and beyond the BRI influence, so in this page, the China's growing presence in UN bodies, the United Nations bodies, and the multilateral institution further illustrate its evolving posture. So by 2023, China held leadership positions in 5 of the 15 specialized UN agencies, including the International Telecommunication Union and the Food and Agriculture Organization. It has also proposed new legal concepts such as the Community of Shared Future of Mankind, which it has attempted to insert into international resolution, reflecting a normative vision distinct from Western liberal internationalism. It illustrated, I think, a shift from a rule taker to a rule shaker in international legal order. While its initial engagement in legalization, which I mentioned before, particularly post-1978 and during the WTO accession, which China engagement can be characterized by legal adaptation aimed at market access and foreign capital, China's currently is more discursive strategies demonstrate its ambition to reshape global legal meanings from within. So besides, China's conduct exhibits clear patterns of instrumentalism, which can be summarized as a selective convergence. Legal norms are adapted where they serve national interests, and it would be rejected where they challenge state sovereignties. This is evident in China's resistance to binding dispute resolution in sovereignty-sensitive matters, for example, the South China Sea arbitration, and its cautious ISDS participation. Even as it aggressively utilized WTO and commercial arbitration systems to assess economic rights. So finally, China's participation in legal globalization is neither linear or binary. It is better understood as a spectrum ranging from formal convergence to substantive divergence, anchored in a state-centric, pragmatic worldview. This engagement suggests China is not merely integrating into the international legal order, but reshaping it on its own terms. So China engagement with international dispute resolution mechanism is also characterized by a duality: openness in economic commercial context and resistance in political sensitive disputes, which is also the characteristics in Belt and Road dispute resolution mechanism, which I will discuss it later. So after that, I first also take an overview of what is Belt and Road Initiative, because this is also another very key concept in my study. So what is Belt and Road Initiative? It was launched in 2013 by President Xi Jinping. And 2013, this is a time when China faced mounting internal and external economic pressures. Domestically, China has reached a stage of industrial overcapacity, particularly in steel, cement, and heavy manufacturing sectors. And externally, Beijing the capital of China, sought to transform its geopolitical pressures into a more cooperative and economically integrated landscape. The initial framing of the Belt and Road Initiative was straightforward: just build connectivity, promote trade, and export surplus capacity. So in its early phase during the 2013 to 2017, the BRI projects primarily just resolved around conventional infrastructure. For example, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the Sri Lanka Port Project, and like the Kenya Standard Gauge Railway. These all the flagship projects in its early phase. But the shift began to take form by 2017. With the introduction of the Digital Silk Road as a sub-initiative of BRI strategy, it signified an expansion of objective beyond more mere physical connectivity. And from 2018 to 2019, a more dramatic turn occurred in BRI in traditional sectors, such as the real estate, energy, and heavy construction, began to decline dramatically. We should know that in a very long time, China outbound investment are always focusing on these very traditional infrastructure projects. But it now started to decline. And then the greenfield investments in technology, automotive, and clean energy surged. So a more nuanced interpretation suggests that China is actively reshaping the normative framework of development, cooperation, and digital sovereignty. And also, following the greenfield investments, the 2017 documents guidance on promoting green Belt and Road. Has outlines that the green development guidelines for overseas investment cooperation is a similar trend in environmental governance. So these documents all has illustrated a hybrid model for the BRI. It is evolving. It combines state-led planning with green finance mechanism, and it also departs from Western ESG-based legal models. So to this sense, the evolving values of the BRI reflect a fundamental shift in China's external legal strategy, moving from a focus on physical infrastructure to an emphasis on digital governance and high-tech industrial investment. So the BRI to this concept can be understood as a revolutionary platform for legal innovation. Rather than aligning with the existing international legal regimes, China could now engage in legal globalization by starting to playing an active role in the normative landscape, employing the soft law, technology standard setting, and supply chain integration as a strategic instruments. So this evolution marked by a coherent sequence of policy shifts and institutional development underscores the BRI's transformation from a development-oriented initiative into a vehicle for global legal influence. And about the absence of BRI law and less institutionalized frameworks, these are the two main topics for legal scholars to discuss BRI. Both of which results from the BRI soft law framework. In contrast to traditional treaty-based multilateralism framework, the BRI operates without codified legal frameworks. Also, it lacks formal dispute resolution mechanism, and also it do not set any supranational institutions. Instead, it relies on more memorandum of understanding. This is not a binding agreement. Also, the engineering contracts in specific projects, and also some project-specific instruments that selectively embed China's regulatory norms into the projects. So the BRI enables China to diffuse regulatory norms without binding legal comments. This legal informality is not a flaw, but a strategic asset. It allows China to adapt to shifting political landscapes, avoid legal entanglements, and project normative influence across diverse jurisdictions, rather than challenging the international legal order through formal rulemaking or hegemonic imposition. The BI reshapes global legal globalization from the margins, replacing centralized authority with decentralized legal engagement. In doing so, China assumes a rule shaker role, inducing a hybrid legal model that privileges flexibility, pragmatism, and political celebration over universal legal coherence or institutional oversight. So this is very important to mention again that the legal decentralization also shapes how disputes are anticipated, avoided, and resolved within the BI projects. It prefers in BI projects that it prefers non-treaty based instruments, and project-specific contractual governance has significant implication for the design and function of its DRM, dispute resolution mechanism. As such, based on this understanding of the BI strategy, then I will discuss the Belt and Road dispute resolution mechanism. I categorize it into two. One is the commercial dispute resolution mechanism, which is happened in the private parties, and the other is the state involved, which is the state-to-state disputes and the investor-to-state disputes. So let's turn to the next page. The first is the BI commercial dispute resolution. First of all, the currently BI commercial dispute resolution, like its software framework, is still relying on existing mechanisms such as the Hong Kong International Arbitration Center, the Dubai International Financial Court, London International Arbitration Center, or others, or the well-known existing arbitration centers. But it also has some China created institution, for example, the CELTEC, China International Economic and Trade Arbitration Center, but it's already existed before the BI. And another is the emergent China-led mechanism. For example, is the CICC, International Commercial Court, which can be viewed as a first step for China's engage in international commercial arbitration. A mechanism under the Belt and Road strategy. Yeah, and all of these developments signify increasing legal complexity and transnational adjudicatory engagement. Their implications for legal globalization remain context, however, because how the BI engage with legal globalization in two distinct dimensions. So I have already summarized it into two tables. The left table is the horizontal engagement, and the right table is the vertical engagement. So based on these two tables, I just due to the time limits, I just make a summarize. So horizontally, referring to the convergence or divergence between legal. First of all, I mentioned again about the definition of what is horizontal engagement, what is the vertical engagement. So horizontally, it means that the convergence or divergence between legal mechanisms operating at the same institutional level. And vertical dimensions means concerning the interaction between different levels of legal ordering. For example, the international level and the national level. Yeah. My argument here is that the BI has not resulted in uniform convergence, but instead produced a fragmented legal landscape characterized by procedural adaptation, institutional divergence, and selective normative engagement, which is largely following the long-term China's strategy to international law, which is the selective convergence. Yeah, and based on the table, horizontally, BI has thickened cross-institutional interaction without flattering differences in autonomy, transparency, or crucial control. A fragmented but functional order, convergence in tools and usual experience, and divergence in institutional anchoring and consequently in trust. Yeah, and the vertical engagement reflects a one-way diffusion of selective legal practice in China, rather than mutual transformation or shared norm development. The BRI has generated internal procedural shifts, but these are constrained by existing institutional hierarchies and political sensitivities. Rather than fostering deep convergence, the BRI has produced fragmented vertical legal globalization, partial, uneven, and shaped by sovereign calibration rather than normative integration. So finally, the expansion of legal infrastructure under the BRI has not transformed China into a rule shaker in the domain of the commercial dispute resolution, and also it has established the CICC International Commercial Court. It has attracted formal attention for a very long time, but currently it's still in bad judicial supervision, which means that it has limited innovations and limited party autonomy, and the absence of cross-systemic uptake significantly curtails their normative influence. So at last, we can the current scholarship only view this innovative hub CICC as just a symbolic institutional innovation whose potential is undermined by procedural rigidity and the lack of independent institutional credibility. And but from another perspective view, maybe some scholars also think that the CICC may be just served for the China's domestic legal reform. This ambition is not focusing on to enhance the China's influence on international commercial arbitration. Yeah, but this is another another part of scholars' view. But unlike China's more proactive rule shaker or rule maker role in the AIIB or digital governance, the legal initiative under the BRI embody a logic of cautious participation. We can see it's rather than normative disruption. Through the BRI, China seeks to enhance its legal visibility and international legitimacy, but without intervening in the doctrine core of the global commercial legal order. What emerges is a pathway for symbolic convergence, structural reservation, and normative restraint. So, in short, China's role in this domain is that of an adaptive legal actor, not a normative leader. Its legal institutions have undergone procedural upgrading following the international standards, but it lacked the capacity to stimulate institutional learning or structural evolution abroad. The global influence of this mechanism lies more in image building and diplomatic function than in substantive legal diffusion or in institutional transplantation. The BRI serves not a springboard for Chinese legal hegemony, but rather as a platform for embedded legal diplomacy. I will try to speed up in this part. So in this part, just you can see I have summarized three key facts in the state involved disputes. So in the BRI context, negotiation remains the overwhelming dominant method of resolving disputes involving states, whether in state-state conflicts or investor-state cases where state-owned enterprises are the claimants, and the overwhelming predominance of negotiation in BRI state-involved disputes is not an innovation of the initiative, but rather an extension for a longer-standing pattern in China's outbound infrastructure and investment governance. Because prior to 2013, the China's SOE, state-owned enterprises, and policy banks were already resolving overseas projects through its negotiations. So this is my first comments. And then I have seen that, based on this, the still negotiation is the dominant method of the BRI. My argument is that in state-involved dispute resolution mechanism, the BRI operates less as a rule maker, but more as a rule bypasser. With rule-shaking implications, it sidelines multilateral adjudication in favor of bilateral political processes, thereby reinforcing horizontal divergence and producing little vertical convergence. While not codifying a rival legal order, this practice erodes the normative authority of existing institutions by embedding a negotiation-centric model in a major transnational economic initiative. In other words, in state-involved dispute resolution mechanism, China's role as a role bypasser provides the operational freedom to manage disputes outside the current existing treaty-based framework. But in theory, this could also underpin a future rule shaker position in the whole legal globalization development. Yeah, and this is the summary of my current research, and my future work is just focusing on the 3 research questions which I have shown on the slides, and make a short summary. My general view on the BRI current, maybe I will change in the future, is that BRI consists not merely a development policy, but a sophisticated platform for transnational legal experimentation. Its legal design and implementation reveal China's calculated engagement with legal globalization, grounded in a flexible, decentralized approach that privileges operational pragmatism over formal legal harmonization. Yeah, so thank you for listening my presentation, and welcome to all comments.
All right, many congratulations, Yizhi. You stuck to the time. That was very good. You have excellent presentation skills, and the topic is fascinating. You even mentioned Bernard Aubry, a person I used when doing my own PhD at Sorbonne University many years ago, and it was on China's rule of law by internationalization. And as you can see, I fully, agree. And to some extent, at that time already, I was saying certain things which is just said. I'm going to use my privilege as a chair before, of course, giving the floor to the commenters, the discussants, because it was fascinating. You talk a lot about, rule making, rule shaking, and whatnot. But would you agree with me that, of course, and that's what you were saying in the conclusion. You don't have to answer to me right now, but you may at the end. As much as China might be a rule shaker or an institution, shaker and a policy shaker, it's certainly not yet a rule shaker or maker. And I would like you to go deeper in the content, in the normative content of certain rules, because otherwise it's a bit too much at a high level. And this is surely something which might be, said during your PhD defense. So what rules are we talking about exactly? All right, so you don't have to answer now. So now I'm going to give the floor to our first commentator. This is Dr. Thembi, who's here, I think. So Thembi, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. But Yizhi, thank you so much. I mean, this was a thought-provoking presentation. I mean, when I saw the topic, I was excited. This was really up my alley. I mean, this topic on dispute resolution mechanisms under the Belt and Road Initiative is important, and it's relevant in the context of China's growing role in shaping global legal norms. But also, as many global South countries are participants in it, it's really essential that we understand how these mechanisms operate. So my question is firstly more on a conceptual level, your conceptual framework and your theoretical application of Orby's framework. So you frame the Belt and Road Initiative, the dispute resolution architecture, as part of China's engagement with legal globalization. And then you use Orby's framework and how you see the Belt and Road Initiative mechanisms as balancing horizontal versus vertical legal globalization. But what does that balance tell us about China's desired position within the global legal hierarchy? And I'll tell you why I'm asking you this. So with Orby's framework, it's largely descriptive. And so it helps us in mapping how the law circulates, if we can put it that way, horizontally and vertically. So it clarifies what kind of globalization is being described, and which is great, because then now by using this framework, you're helping us distinguish between the normative and descriptive claims, which then provides the analytical clarity to separate the empirical observation from the evaluative judgment, if we could say that. But the descriptive analysis also raises normative questions. So it would be really interesting for you to then go on with the normative questions. And I think then you're asking, what kind of globalization is this? So then, is it inclusive, promoting South-South legal pluralism? Is it hierarchical? And so for me, I look forward to your work also connecting all this descriptive framework with that sort of a normative analysis, because without a normative analysis, for me, the study seems, or it risks being a neutral map of just legal flows without a rather critical assessment, such as critically analyzing who benefits and then who sets the rules. So for me, that's what I would look forward to you doing, because the Belt and Road Initiative offers a unique lens, to observe this transformation, and especially since global South states are now getting into these new legal relationships. So it raises important questions, whether we are moving towards a more multipolar legal order and the future of global governance. And so for me, that's what it is. But a thought-provoking question now is this a genuine step towards a multipolar legal globalization, or does it risk being a parallel legal order dominated by China, for instance? And I don't think you need to conduct an in-depth analysis or study on this, but it would really be valuable to link this descriptive analysis to the normative questions, such as this, if that helps. But great, I liked it. Thanks.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Thembi. So that's, again, a thought-provoking and fascinating question. Who benefits from all that eventually, right? Okay, so let's move to our second commenter, Dr. Masood. And you have many questions, but I'm sure you're taking notes and you're going to respond brilliantly to that at the end.
I don't have many questions. I thought the presentation was excellent. I mean, I'm not an international lawyer. I do international commercial arbitration. So it was very helpful for you to then go into some detail about the fundamental principles, explaining the fundamental concepts and the theoretical framework. So that was absolutely great, because it allowed me to then understand how your arguments were flowing later on in the presentation. So thank you so much for that. I just have a question on the various dispute resolution procedures that you mentioned and the various initiatives which China has when it comes to the Belt and Road project in resolving disputes. And you mentioned the existing mechanisms, you mentioned international commercial arbitration, you mentioned the Beijing Arbitration Center, and also you mentioned the commercial courts. And as you are aware, there's now a phenomena internationally of commercial courts emerging in major economic centers and competing with one another for business, because they are trying to say, well, come to our jurisdiction to resolve your disputes rather than going to London, for example. So my question around is really around those mechanisms. What I essentially want you to think about, I guess, with this question is this. Can we take China's approach to the existing mechanisms, arbitration, commercial courts, as an acknowledgement and an understanding that China needs to and will respect party autonomy of the players within the commercial dispute resolution area, so private investors investing in these projects, and therefore China is rightfully acknowledging the principle of party autonomy, reinforcing the principle of party autonomy, and respecting the principle of party autonomy, especially in international commercial arbitration. Because if China doesn't take this fragmented approach, I like the use of the language, the fragmented legal landscape when it comes to these forms of dispute resolution. I like that, because fundamentally what we have is we have alternative dispute resolution pluralism. We have all these different types of procedures, and they are there because they are there in order to allow parties to resolve the disputes without getting bogged down in any other form of more formal type of dispute resolution. So my point is, can we think more deeply about the principle of party autonomy, its significance in international commercial dispute resolution, and in particular in relation to international commercial arbitration, because I think from what you've said in your research thus far, China is absolutely taking the right approach, because it knows that it needs to do this in order to ensure that it continues to have that investment and confidence from private investors coming into the project. So just thinking around those issues would be helpful as well.
Thank you so much, Masood. Again, fascinating, especially because we have big reforms in China at the moment in commercial arbitration with CETAC and many other arbitration instances taking a big part. And now we come to our third discussant. So this is Dr. Yizhi.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this fascinating and well-structured presentation. Your paper engaged with real paradox in China's legal globalization, how a country is so active in multilateral regimes such as the WTO and ICSID, simultaneously advanced negotiation-centered, less transparent, and softer law process under the BRI. So this tension between global participation and domestic control is indeed one of the defining questions of our time. I was also particularly impressed by how you applied two-dimensional framework to discuss paradox, distinguishing between horizontal and vertical dimension of legal globalization. So your argument that the BRI generates horizontal divergence but maintain vertical stasis capture the architecture of China's legal diplomacy. There are so many regional and domestic venues such as the CICC and the CIETAC's BRI panels, without yet a single multilateral coordination layer. So if I may, I would like to extend your analysis from this point. So you describe vertical stasis or the absence of hierarchical integration as a structural feature, but I think it also represents a transitional moment. For instance, on May 30 this year, the 33 states signed the Convention on the Establishment of the International Organization for Mediation in Hong Kong, the IOMID, which entered into force on August 29. So this organization, I think, institutionalized mediation among states, investors, and commercial actors under the principle of sovereignty equality. So my question is, in your point of view, could this new mediation initiative like the IOMID begin to move us beyond what you called vertical stasis, perhaps showing the first signs of a more coordinated, consent-based global framework? And my second question also related to this mediation initiative, like your argument is China as a rule bypasser, a rule shaper, and a norm contester. So the category of rule shaper focus mainly on the substance of global norms, what the rule says. But given recent development, the recent trend, might we now be seeing a new dimension, a procedural rulemaker, that one concerned with how those norms are applied and coordinated in practice? So do you think China's emphasis on mediation reflects this procedural turn, a way of shaping global law through process design? Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jackie. So Yizhi, you have so many questions to answer in such a short time, but we will give you more time if you need to.
First of all, thank you so much for such professional comments. Actually, some of the questions also I have discussed several times with my supervisors. For example, like I should not always talking at very high level because it will make the whole research seems lack of the support materials. And in my research, I also faces a lot of dilemma, because when I'm trying to find some BRI cases or I'm trying to find what is BRI cases, it's very hard. It's very hard first to define what is a BRI cases, because BRI sometimes it's like a named project. So at last, my current research is only define BRI cases as the China's outbound investment in the BRI member states after 2013. Because some of the cases, they did not say it is BRI cases, but it has already meet the standards of BRI project. So that's the first. And then it's very hard for me to find a very open to public BRI contracts, because especially in commercial arbitration, because it should be confidential, and most of the cases currently based on data is solved in Hong Kong International Arbitration Center, and The rest are some sorted in CELTAC, China's International Trade and Economic and Trade Arbitration Center, and some of this solved in ICC. So based on this, Hong Kong International Arbitration Center only just reviewed some common characteristics of the BI, like foreign selection, like what is the procedural rules in the arbitration agreements in the specific BI projects. But I'm very hard to find a very strong supporting fact or materials to give me an argument of how currently the BRI contracts what it looks like, and how it's trying to solve its disputes in practice. But I have do some interviews survey to some lawyers and some project manager in African, and they told me that currently the negotiation is still the dominant method, even in some commercial disputes, because the whole project is very complex. This always happens between the state to state, but combined with some commercial disputes. So all of them are currently solved in the negotiation, and some of them may come to the Hong Kong International Arbitration Center. For example, it's for the delay of the deadline or others. Yeah, and another is that I'm very thankful to one question is that what kind of globalization whether China or Belt and Road finally wants to meet, or I should make, for example, the inclusive globalization or some very limited or the narrow definition of legal globalization, and this is what I'm currently working on, because it's closely linked to my final arguments. So this question I'm very hard to answer it now, but well, I will make a very careful consideration later. And about the mediation. First of all, maybe I have only limited knowledge of this mediation initiative, but I want to say that just like the mediation is always what the China's legal system wants to promote it, and wants to enhance the influence on international mediation. Currently, in international commercial court, China's international commercial court, it's just like a one-stop mechanism, which means it combines the mediation, arbitration, and the litigation together. It has already have the collaboration relationship between some mediation center. For example, the Shanghai Mediation Center, the Hong Kong International Arbitration Center also have the mediation procedures, and in the CICC procedure rules, the mediation has already been a must step before the litigation. It's similar to some procedural rules in current China's domestic legal system, because it wants to solve before the litigation to save time. Yeah, but in the commercial court, I think the currently some literature saying that it is one driving forces for the mediation rules before the litigation is that the Supreme Court also want to enhance the influence on mediation among the international commercial dispute resolution mechanism. But thank you for mentioning this mediation initiative, and I will check the relating materials and literature. Thank you. And about the principles of party autonomy, thank you for the practical suggestion from lawyer. And I think that this is very it's a significant way for me to, while doing the research on the commercial dispute resolution mechanism. Currently, I'm focusing on the 5 areas which you can see in the former table. I discussed the convergence and divergence from the 5 areas. I'm only focusing on the forum selection or the transparency, but maybe I should also focusing on the specific rules, because maybe I can find some very inspiring observations from these specific rules, and I will check it later. Thank you. And this is my response to such professional comments, and I have wrote it down, and I will have a careful consideration later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have time for maybe one question or two from the audience? Yes? Fantastic. So I think maybe if you have a question, please raise your hand or please. I don't see any question coming. You see, you were very convincing. It was a very good presentation. They're all very shy. Any other comment or question from our discussants? Okay, fantastic. So I think it was a fantastic presentation. Everybody very much appreciated what you have done, and you have also yourself reflected upon where you are in your PhD and the need surely to look more precisely, more deeply into a set of rules, because this is obviously the simple criticism that many could make at this stage, but you certainly will do that in the future. So thank you very much, Yizhi, for such an insightful and stimulating presentation. Your work makes a valuable contribution to the broader discussion on legal globalization and the work of Aubrey. I didn't know it was still very much popular, and it has given us much to reflect on. My heartfelt thanks as well to our excellent discussants, Dr. Chachi, Dr. Masood, and Dr. Thembi, for their thoughtful and engaging feedback, and to everyone who joined us today for your participation and support. The Global South Network warmly welcomes PhD students from all disciplines and from every corner of the world to share their research and receive interdisciplinary feedback. And this is really fantastic. If you're interested in presenting your work or taking part in a future session, please contact our colleague, Dr. Nouman Rayat, the founder and convener of the network, who's here today, at the email address shared in the chat box that you should see somewhere. Next week at the same time, we'll be joined by Dixon Tanongo, a PhD candidate at the School of Law of Reading, who will present part of his doctoral project titled The Rights of Persons with Disabilities in Nigeria. Very different, but equally very interesting. The online session will take place on the 15th of October from 3 o'clock in the UK. Until then, take care. Look after yourselves. Have a great evening, a great night, morning, wherever you are in the world. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Leila. Thank you for chairing. Thanks.
Thanks, Leila, for excellently chairing the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great evening. Bye, everyone.